Well, we'll be tracking that story very, very closely tomorrow as well on the Buck Stops here. But let's return now to our big debate. It's made international headlines. Is this effectively the end of the military alliance between the United States and Pakistan? Donald Trump, remember, in his first tweet of the new year said, and let me say that again, the U.S. has foolishly given Pakistan more than $33 billion in aid over the last 15 years. They've given us nothing but lies and deceit, thinking of our leaders as fools. And now the United States has gone and said that a $250 million aid package, military aid package to Pakistan will not take place, will not go ahead. That's been scrapped. What does this actually mean for Pakistan now? We have only seen a partial response from the Pakistani Foreign Office. Will there be more details? Joining us now to debate this, Brahma Chellaney, Professor of Strategic Studies at the Center for Policy Research. Thanks very much, Dr. Chellaney, for being with us. Musharraf Zaidi, senior journalist from Pakistan, with us as well, as also K.C. Singh, the former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Let me go across to Musharraf Zaidi first. Mr. Zaidi, is this effectively the end of your military alliance or military equation, as it were, with the United States?
I think the Pakistan-U.S. military relationship has been evolving. It's evolved throughout the last 16 years, ever since the U.S. troops arrived in Afghanistan to counter al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And I think they're going to continue to evolve. I don't anticipate that there's going to be a complete break-off in the relationship. But over time, as the U.S.-India relationship has gotten stronger and the strategic imperatives and incentives for both countries have increased to be closer and to cooperate more robustly, then almost naturally that meant that there was going to be a sliding down the scale of cooperation between the U.S. and Pakistan. So I think we're seeing that play out. And I think the reason that we're all dealing with it so dramatically and with so much fervor, I mean, I understand that there's a big celebration in India, and I don't begrudge my Indian friends that. But the reason that this is such big news is the method of message delivery and the messenger himself. Trump has been known
I don't think,
to tweet.
Mr. Zaidi, there's any celebration among the more sensible ones of us over here, but the way it plays out on social media is, I think, a different story altogether. I think there is more an analysis of what the implications of this are, and that's what we're trying to do over here. Ambassador K.C. Singh, what Mr. Zaidi was saying is true. That India's equation with the United States has changed dramatically. Some would say that India, the U.S. uses India increasingly as leverage against China. China, of course, is growing and continues to grow very close to Pakistan. So is that what it's really about? The U.S. no longer as allied as it once was with Pakistan and more allied with us?
No, I think the spat between U.S. and Pakistan is restricted, limited to their disagreement over Afghanistan, whereas the convergence with India is far greater in terms of what U.S. thinks India should be doing in the Indo-Pacific. So they're very clear. Even in the August Afghanistan policy rollout, it's very clear that they're inviting us to give more developmental assistance in Afghanistan. I don't think they've asked India to take on any kind of a security role. That is, even if it was possible for India to do that, because even if we had troops there, we wouldn't know how to supply them, etc. So this is, I think, specifically frustration on the part of Trump, that they've not been able to get the Taliban to the negotiating table, and Haqqanis continue to pester their troops in Afghanistan. So they're pressurizing Pakistan on those 2 points. I don't think this really has India as a part of that, and that's why we shouldn't be over-jubilant.
Professor Chellaney, from the limited response so far from the Pakistani Foreign Office, they say that Trump quoted a figure of $33 billion. He can hire a US-based audit firm on our expense to verify this figure and let the world know who is lying and deceiving. They then go on to say that they have given Pakistani air bases, Pakistani land for US operations. Now, this is true, though. But how does the US potentially counter that argument? How does the world potentially counter that argument when Pakistan says, look, what have you been doing in our country for so long?
Well, for the last 15 years, Pakistan has been one of the top 3 recipients of American aid in the world. So billions of dollars have been showered on Pakistan annually for almost 15 years now. So having received such large American largesse, Now for Pakistan to say that they need an audit on the aid that they have received underscores the fact that they have not lived up to the promise on which this aid flowed to Pakistan. They promised to clean up the act. They promised to ensure that terrorists operating in Afghanistan against American forces were not using Pakistani territory as sanctuary. They made these kinds of promises, these false promises, and now when the relationship with America is deteriorating, and deteriorating for several years now, it's not just under Trump. For the last 4 or 5 years, we are seeing the withering of the U.S. military alliance. And this withering is now coming under most sustained pressure by Pakistani actions. Failure to live up to its promises, failure to ensure that its territory is not being used by transnational terrorists. And, for example, if you look at former Afghan President Karzai's tweet today, he basically says that America has been fighting. America has been fighting the war on the wrong side of the Afghanistan-Pakistan divide.
Okay, Professor Chellaney, I want to go across to General Atta Hasnain, the former General Officer commanding 15 Corps. Thanks, General, very much for joining us. There's another way of looking at the US-Pakistan equation. If you look at security-related US aid to Pakistan over the years from 2012 to 2016, it's actually been going down from about $850 million, just security-related aid. In 2012, it's down to $322 million in 2016. Now, if you look at CPEC and what the China-Pakistan economic corridor potentially brings, it's billions of dollars. So in a sense, okay, and you know, you can say that you can't compare apples with oranges, but the point being that where the US is moving out, not just in terms of security aid, but total aid as well, China is moving in, and therefore Pakistan doesn't need the US in the same way that it once did. Would you agree, General, that that's perhaps a realignment?
Vishnu, I would say you are actually spot on. In fact, I would start by mentioning the fact that this element of cockiness that we are seeing in the Pakistani attitude towards the United States actually commences from sometime around 2013-14. That is the time when the drawdown of the military aid also started, and the China-Pakistan economic corridors started coming into being. Now it's a truism that the China-Pakistan economic corridor has nothing to do with military aid. It has nothing to do with strengthening the security system of Pakistan. It is mostly to do with economics, and it's mostly to do with infrastructure. But what it has actually done is actually given oodles of confidence, strategic confidence to Pakistan. It's to be able to take on the might of the United States, show it two fingers and say, well, we can do it on our own, and we can do it with Chinese assistance. And that is what is manifesting itself today as a part of Pakistan's initial response itself. You can sense the sense of cockiness in that response which Pakistan has given to the United States.
Musharraf Zaidi, would you like to respond to that? That look, this is a defiant Pakistan who doesn't really care about what the United States has to say, because you've got your back covered. You've got China over there assisting you. Militarily, the quality of weaponry you're now acquiring from China almost matches in many cases what you've acquired from the US in the past. Therefore, you don't really need that security technology that America used to provide. That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, it is one way of looking at it, and of course, General Hasnain's views are, important, and they're well considered. But I would actually invite your viewers and the great panel that you've assembled, Vish, to think about this. The 7th largest diaspora in the United States is the Pakistani diaspora. The single largest country that imports Pakistani goods and services in the world is the United States. Pakistan's balance of payments issue, among many other challenges, demands and requires either bond issues that need underwriting from financial firms in the private sector that are largely based in the U.S., or it needs underwriting from institutions like the IMF, where the United States continues to own and operate the largest influence directly through the voting shares. So I think the notion that Pakistan has been cocky, even if you look at the reactions from the Pakistani defense minister, the Pakistani foreign minister, the prime minister just chaired a meeting of the National Security Council. Everything that's come out of that meeting has been relatively measured. I understand that there's a certain way in which our friends in India read things in Pakistan, but I haven't actually been able to discern the cockiness that General Saab has pointed to. In fact, I think there's been a rather measured response from Pakistan, which is the way it should be. Pakistan is still a small country with a lot of problems, and the United States, with all its manifest problems, is still the biggest power in the world, and one that is, as I said earlier, is increasingly in the Indian camp. And so I think it behooves Pakistan to take these tweets, coming as they may be from Donald Trump, more seriously than what's been suggested by General Atta Hasnan. I think that Pakistan does take it seriously, and I don't think there's any cockiness at all. I think it's a matter of serious concern.
Ambassador K.C. Singh, Pakistan is used to fighting against the United States with its back against the wall. Time and time again, the Pakistan-U.S. relationship has been fraught with problems. Threats from the United States, Kargil just off the top of my head when the US again read Pakistan the Riot Act, and yet through lobbyists and a very proactive foreign affairs setup, they've been able to convince many in the United States to continue supporting their cause. Do you believe that the challenge they face now, particularly in light of Donald Trump's tweet, is their biggest foreign policy challenge thus far with regard to the US?
I think the problem they may now have is that, it's a very centralized decision-making method in Washington. Straight from the telephone of President Trump, the tweet goes out. Now, it's traditionally they played the lobbies there, State Department, Defense, and so on and so forth. And the other one is that the top posts in America now are with generals who have first-hand experience of either having served in Afghanistan or dealt with Pakistan through CENTCOM or one of the postings there. So they have first-hand experience of facing this kind of duplicity where promises were made and yet they have not been fulfilled. So you have a huge amount of information around the president, which is basically feeding into President Trump's instinct that they are being taken for a ride. And secondly, don't forget, adding to what Musharraf has said, don't forget that traditionally United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia have been two countries that have supported Pakistan financially whenever they have required help. There's a huge amount of Pakistanis in those two countries sending remittances, and those two are very closely aligned with the US now at the moment. And they may also tighten the screws. And don't forget, President Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and his brother were in Saudi Arabia the other day. I believe a plane was sent for Shahbaz Sharif, and the Saudis may again be intervening and putting pressure on the Pakistani army. So many players come with US who would also exert pressure.
Okay. Professor Chellaney, it's always been in Pakistan's interest, some parts of Pakistan. Pakistan often acts with very different voices: civil society, the intelligence community, the army community, non-state actors. It's always been in somebody's interest to ensure that the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan is restive. It's never peaceful. And therefore, in a situation like this, when the US says that, look, we can't deal with you anymore, and Pakistan increasingly feels more confident in where it lies, will there be a continuation of this dangerous border, terrorists going across to Afghanistan, just the way it's always been for many, many years? Perhaps a recognition of the fact that at the end of the day, 15-odd years, the US has just not been able to achieve what it has. What more can the US do? Cut off $250 million of military aid? Okay, that's fine. May not really be needed anymore. Has Pakistan, in a sense, won what they were always trying to achieve?
Well, there are two things here. First, as you rightly point out, the withholding of $255 million is hardly going to cause any pain to Pakistan because it has powerful benefactors like China and Saudi Arabia to support it. But as far as the Afghan-Pakistan border is concerned, given the consensus in Pakistan that Pakistan needs to assert control over Afghanistan and ensure that Afghanistan remains a pliant state of Pakistan. So this policy approach that Pakistan has pursued for so long, which has encouraged its military establishment to nurture terrorists, to first rear the Taliban and to nurture the Haqqani network, that policy is not going to change.
Okay.
But there's one important new factor that is coming into play in recent days, which is Iran. Things are hotting up in Iran. If Iran continues to go down this direction that is internal unrest, maybe even chaos in Iran, then Pakistan's prominence in American strategy in Southwest Asia could increase.
Okay.
So today, for the last 15, 20 years, it's been Afghanistan. But if Iran goes down the tube, then certainly Pakistan will become an increasing factor in American calculations.
Musharraf said you had a point to make. Go ahead.
Well, I just, I wanted to challenge a little bit what Brahma said and a little bit what Casey said as well. I think this assumption that the modality is that Pakistan keeps sending terrorists across the border into Afghanistan has been, I think, fundamentally disproven. The Kulbhushan Jadhav case is a good example of the fact that, whilst Pakistan may have made many mistakes and may have done many offensive things, India is no babe in the woods. It's no spring chicken when it comes to not only defending its interests, but also provoking Pakistan, using Afghanistan as a proxy weapon
so that's
against
been completely
Pakistan.
denied. We believe that Kulbhushan Jadhav was picked up from Iran where he had a legitimate business.
That's what the Indian... Right, I understand that's the Indian position,
it's
but
being fought out
I'm
in
here,
the International Court
I'm
of
here
Justice.
to share.
You had one hearing go completely against you.
I understand. That's the well-established narrative in India, and I thought that it might be useful to share the Pakistani perspective on this, which is simply that if the issue is whether Afghanistan can be a proxy state for the Indian government, then the degree of resistance that you'll find from Pakistan to that will trump any considerations about how angry it might make the U.S. And I think that's really what we're seeing happen. As long as Afghanistan continues to be seen by the Pakistani strategic community as a threat that is being driven by India, then Pakistan's going to keep doing the things that it's been doing for a long time. So I think there needs to be some sort of a compact that allows our Afghan brothers and sisters to live independently, freely, and in peace.
I think that's what everybody wants. The question is, how will that take place? Musharraf, but I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just because I'm running out of time. I have to go across to General Hasnain one last time. General, for us here in India, given our security scenario, just a couple of days back, on the 31st, we lost 5 CRPF soldiers, Jawans in Kashmir. This is a battle that goes on and on and on. Does this U.S. statement from Trump potentially have anything to do? Could it potentially impact our security scenario in Kashmir?
Well, Vishnu, judging from the responses which we hear from Hafiz Saeed and maybe other members of the same community, the radical organizations in Pakistan, I think it actually instigates them all to join hands together and perhaps club Israel, the United States and India together as the common enemy and continue to hope to target them. We have seen that they are finding it difficult to carry out operations in Jammu and Kashmir at the moment. But with the political space which is available in Pakistan, with the weakening of all the political parties, there is an attempt by all these radical elements to find that strategic space for themselves. And it manifests the best way by showing themselves to be politically aligned with Islam in a more radicalized way. That manifests itself also by their violent acts in Jammu and Kashmir.
All right.
So you will find that with all this happening, with coercion from the United States, you will find an enhanced violence, levels of violence in Jammu and Kashmir increasing.
30 seconds, Brahma. Go ahead.
Well, we in India expect the United States to act against Pakistan. But we have to ask ourselves, does India have a consistent policy on Pakistan? Is there clarity in India's policy on Pakistan? Because, we declare Pakistan to be a terroristan at the United Nations, and yet we don't back our words with action. India is shying away from imposing the smallest of small sanctions on Pakistan, yet we expect the United States to fight the battle on our behalf.
Right.
That won't happen.
Yeah.
The fight against Pakistan's state terrorism is India's fight. India will have to leverage its ties with the United States
Yeah.
to pressure the United States to act against Pakistan, but India has to act on its own.
Right.
Example, why is India allowing a bloated, ISI-infested Pakistan High Commission in New Delhi to maintain the large staff? Why aren't we leveraging the Indus Waters Treaty?
Okay.
Why are we allowing the barter trade across the line of control?
Lots of points you mentioned
Yes.
over there. I'm sorry, I'm completely out of time. The big question is this, one way or the other, what impact will this have? The Trump statement as far as India is concerned, certainly what impact will it have on Pakistan? Will it change the security order in our part of the world? As usual, no answers to that question. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. Good night.